Hey, everybody. Welcome. We've got some Droplet power users on the call, which is awesome. Lisette and Jeremy. Hi, Jen. It's nice to meet you. We should have others joining us. I'm sure they'll trickle in. It is late July after all. So, um, but thank you for coming. This session is all about workflow correction loops. My name is Nick Duell. I'm the subject matter expert here at Droplet. Jen, if you're not familiar, I was a chemistry teacher and then a school administrator and then a district administrator before adopting Droplet and actually learned exactly the topic that we're going to talk about today, which is how do we set up these workflow corrections? What pathways do we draw into the workflow? And we call them loops because very often in Droplet, you don't actually want to permanently reject a submission. You want to send it back to a previous workflow step for changes, and then that person can make changes and then just simply re-advance the submission. The approver then can see it a second time, and it's a loop because it could happen as many times as is needed until that submission is submitted accurately. So in this training, good news for you if you are a builder, you feel confident building already. This is a good session for you because this is one of our more advanced topics. We'll be using a little bit of code expression in this. If you're a brand new builder, this might not be the best place to start. What I might do instead is attend one of our upcoming training sessions. And actually, I've got a slide all about that. So next week, 1 p.m. Eastern time, is Build a Form. It's kind of our flagship live training. We repeat that again on Tuesday, August 5th. And that training just happens the first, third, and I think maybe fifth Tuesdays of every month. And then we're going to start to sprinkle in some new live trainings here. I'm really excited about the August 12th training, which is all about mastering data sets. Data sets are really, really handy, but can take a little bit of getting used to, both with structuring them, making sure the structure stays, the right configuration over time, hooking them up to a form, and then, of course, using them in a form. So looking forward to August 12th. The sign-up link for mastering data sets should go up by the end of the week, but look for that if you've got others in your org that oversee data sets, like maybe folks in IT or personnel, that'd be a good one to send to them. Okay, so for this training session, you've got kind of have two options on how you want to participate. One is you could upload a Droplet file to your instance of Droplet, kind of have me up on one monitor and then have Droplet up on another. I'm going to paste a link in the chat in case this is your speed. What this is a Google Drive link. When you click on that, that will download a .drplt file. That's a Droplet file, and it's essentially a form and a workflow kind of all packaged together. It'll be a good place for us to start. In this training, we're not going to start fresh from a blank canvas, a blank form and workflow. We're going to jump right into something that's kind of already built and add in a workflow correction. The other option, of course, is you could just relax and watch. If you're brand new to Droplet and you may not even have builder permissions, this is kind of your only other option because you would need builder permissions and some prior experience with building, especially in the workflow, to follow along. In any case, this is going to be recorded. It's already recorded. I'll share this recording with you at the end of the session. And I'll also send you just a quick little survey too, so you can let me know how I did, what things we need to improve upon for future trainings. Okay, so when I think about this process of creating correction workflows, I think of it in really a four-step process. You're drawing a correction transition, you're setting who the assignee would be in that case. You're going to write an email to let them know that they have something that they need to correct. And then on the form, you're going to add just a little explanation tile. But if you have a situation, which is pretty common, where you want both a correction and a permanent rejection pathway, It's really more of like a 7-step process. So that's where steps 5, 6, and 7 come in. And so this seems like a lot, but we're going to kind of blaze through these pretty quickly. Um, Before we get started, any questions out there for the good of the group? Feel free to come off mute or drop your question in the chat.
Really quick, Nick. So when you download the Google Drive, what document are we looking for?
Yeah, you're going to download the whole thing.
Okay.
It should be, I think if you go to the upper right corner, let me just do it myself here. Yeah, in the upper right corner, there's a download icon. Looks like a down arrow with like a tray. You'll
Okay.
click that whole thing. It looks
Okay.
like it's a folder. It's almost like a zip folder. Once you have that, then we're actually going to slide right over. That's up next. We'll slide over and we're going to start from that DRPLT file.
Okay.
Yeah,
Perfect.
thanks
Thanks.
for asking, Lisa. Any other questions? Awesome. That's my teacher wait time I'm practicing. Or I guess not practicing. It's been practiced for 12 years. Okay, so let's slide over to Droplet. Again, if you've snagged that Droplet file, we're going to create a new form. You can do that by clicking Create New Form or going to the Forms page and clicking Plus Form. This actually just changed. There used to be a different setup for this. What we're going to do is click this option down here. I have a DRPLT file. I should mention that there is actually a third way to participate in this training, and that's to pull up one of your existing forms that you want to apply a corrections workflow to. But for this, I'm just going to upload my DRPLT file. I happen to have it already downloaded here, and I'm going to hit Open. And this is it. So it's called Practice Form Workflow Correction Loops. And this is the most basic form you can possibly have. It's also got a little workflow. And again, if you're brand new to building droplet forms, this might be a good session to just absorb, save the video when you eventually get it, tuck it away for after you've attended a build a form training. But here's our sample workflow here. We have a start step, which is required of all droplet forms. We have a completed step. And in the middle, I've just stuck this approver with our friend Adrian here, who's going to be approving. Now, Adrian wants the ability to send these forms, which really have nothing on them, but assume there are more things for the person at the start to change. Adrian wants the ability to send it back to the start. Let me pause for a second though. How's everybody doing with uploading a droplet file? If that's the path you're choosing, everybody in good shape? Lisa, did that end up working for you?
No, it did not, but that's
Oh,
okay.
okay. You and I will connect. I want to see exactly what might have went wrong there. But okay, so that's good. Everybody can just kind of sit back and watch then. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to draw the correction translation or transition. So this one is nice and easy. When you look at any workflow step, when you click on it, you'll see on the right side there are two nodes, one with a blue check mark and one with a pink kind of cancel. The blue check mark is where that submission will go if somebody hits submit at that workflow step. But the pink kind of rejection symbol, that's a rejection node. And so when you click on this and hold down, it's going to create, if I let go right now, it will create a rejected step. But I want to keep going over to actually just connect this to the left side of the start step. That's it. If you've got multiple approvers that you want to give the ability to, have them send that back to the start step, you would just repeat that drawing process for each of those approval workflow steps. Okay, step one, done. Step two is going to be to set the assignee. Now, in this case, I don't know if some of you may have noticed, this initially did not have an assignee on it. Now that we have the ability to send this submission back, we have to assign the person who's got responsibility for doing something with this submission once it's sent back. Same options that you'd have on all the other workflow steps throughout your workflow. But in this case, it probably makes the most sense for the submission creator, the person who started the form, to be the assignee here. That way, when Adrian sends this back, the submission creator, whoever that might be, it's going to be different every time, of course, is going to get a notification saying, hey, you've got something to do in Droplet. So when I say I really broke this down into 7 steps and tried to make them as granular as possible, so it seems like 7 is so many steps, but really some of these are minute. The third is really just actually a best practice. In fact, 3 and 4 are just best practices. And that's to write a custom email. So let's bounce back over here. Once a submission has been sent back to the start, an assignment email is going to be sent. And in this case, it goes to the submitter because that's who we have as the assignee. But this is the email subject line and the body that they're going to receive. So it says new submission awaiting your review. Technically, that's true, but it is very vanilla. And so it's best, I advise districts, and we did this in my own district, just to make this a little bit more descriptive about what's actually happening. So something like maybe changes needed um, to your request. And maybe you can make that, this is just a sample form, but if it was a mileage reimbursement request, maybe that would make sense. And then let's say I'm the submitter. It would say, hi, Nick. Nick submitted a request that's awaiting your review. Well, technically that's true as well, but that just reads a little funny. So my advice is just to remove this and to say something like, you know, your recent request or submission has been reviewed, and this is a common way to phrase this, and has been flagged for changes. And then it's a really good idea to just insert dynamically what those changes are. I don't know if any of you have noticed this during your time building forms in Droplet, but you can insert dynamic fields, which are actually what this like little gray chip is. That's going to just change every time based on the submission. And so one of the options in this menu, you've got, recipient, submitter names, things specific to the submission or the form, links and URLs, but the bottom option is the reject reason. And so if we just pop that in there, it looks like this. It's underscore reason. It's one of the only things in Droplet that builders use quite a bit that has an underscore at the beginning of it. What this is anytime somebody rejects something, a little box pops up saying, hey, what's the reason for this action? Whatever they type into that reason box is what's going to go right in there. And if anything is rejected more than one time, that reason just gets overwritten. So this is always going to be whatever the latest rejection reason is. I think this looks pretty good though. So this is just changes needed to your request. Hi, Nick, your recent request has been reviewed and has been flagged for changes. And here's whatever they would put. Click here to review the request. That's a much better, you're going to get more out of your submitters if something's sent back, if you've got something like this set up for that notification. Great. Let's pause after this fourth one, but the fourth is just to add, and again, this is just a suggestion. It's certainly not a requirement for functionality's sake, but you can add an explanation tile to your form so that if there is a rejection reason, it's also not only is it in the notification to the submitter, but it also lives on the form layout, which is helpful for when they click on that link and call up the form. It's got it right on there. It's also really helpful for the approver that may have sent it back. It'll refresh their memory about what needed to be changed. So let's head back to the form. And I'm going to bring in just a text component. I usually do this toward the top in its own section. So I'm going to drop it right here. And I'm going to make this a width of 12. And then I might say something like changes needed. And I'm going to put that reason there too. I can't just put it like this though. I have to surround it with a pair of hashtags on either side. That lets Droplet know, hey, that's a dynamic field. We want to have that value merged in. So I'm going to make this bold. Let me do a little kind of formatting on this. If you just left it like that, most people would miss this. So I like to throw on the section. I like to throw a border around it. Maybe I'll turn off wide alignment because I've got things kind of like nicely lined up on the edges here. This is, by the way, just perfectionism that's been instilled in me, probably by my mother. We could do a border here. I mean, that stands out kind of nicely. Maybe we could change the font color a little bit to make it match. I mean, you can go crazy with this, but that looks pretty good. And now, unfortunately, this will show up until we do something more. This will show up every single time, whether there's a reason populated or not. So one of the last things to do here is really just to go to this section. I'm going to click on the section in this layout tree down here. And I'm going to say, well, I want this to show only under certain situations. Really, the only condition is I want it to show when there is some sort of reason that would be populated right here. And so we can go to a show or hide field rule. I wish this was something that we could grab from the list of components. So we're going to switch to code, but don't be afraid. It's very easy. It's just that. If reason has some sort of value in it, then I want this to populate. So that's all we're going to type into the show or hide field rule. The expression is just simply, does this have something? If the answer is yes, then it evaluates this to being true, and it's going to show that section with the red border around it. If this is blank, it's like saying it's false, and so it's going to hide. That's how that works. Okay, so now we can test this a little bit. Let's go to the workflow. I'm going to click on the start step. Now, I'm also going to hit refresh because I think we may have sent this back at one point. So let me just refresh this to kind of give us a blank slate. And here we go. So Nick, and there's my email, and I'll hit submit. Now this goes to Adrian. Adrian's taking a look at the form. Adrian says, ooh, we need to change something. You left off his last name. Reject, add last name. This is that underscore reason value. And so when Adrian hits done, notice it just bounces right back to the start step. We can't see this in the workflow tester yet, but I would have gotten an email in that situation saying, hey, you've gotten, changes are needed. We've reviewed your submission. Here's what you need to do. Add last name. Click this link to get back to the submission. So now I'm here. I see right on the form also what I saw in the email notification, add last name. So I don't have to fill this out from totally blank. I can just make the necessary changes and then resubmit. And great. So now Adrian can see, oh, changes needed, add last name. That's all I'm looking to make sure is good. And then Adrian can, of course, reject again. Maybe they didn't add the last name, or maybe, something else needs to be fixed. This is that loop. You can see it right here. This could go back and forth forever until Adrian's satisfied with the submission. But in this case, this is all I had to change. So Adrian hits submit, and we're all set. How are we feeling out there? That was a lot all at once. We got a couple thumbs up, or just one thumbs up. There's everybody in good shape. I know a few of you have actually gone through this with us in office hours. So this might be old hat. Nice. Unlicensed room is also giving a thumbs up. All right, great.
Sorry, Nick, that's Chrissy and Mel from Stevenson.
Oh, nice. Okay, so I know that you've gone through this too. Unlicensed room didn't seem like a name. And I thought, maybe that's Popper. Okay, excellent.
Unlicensed room. Sorry, Romina here, but it took me back to remember when we were Zoom teaching and you'd have like the people bomb, like
Yes.
what were they calling those? Like crash the Zoom rooms.
Yeah, Zoom bombing.
Zoom bombing, that's what it was.
I promise we're supposed to be here.
Yeah, they're allowed. Registration is required for this one, I'm pretty sure. Great. Well, you might be thinking, hey, that's awesome, but what if Adrian did want the power to actually permanently reject something, not just to continue having this go in a loop? It could be that it's a submission that just simply, there's nothing to fix. It's just denied on its merits. And so that's where steps 5, 6, and 7 kind of come in. But I do just want to call out that steps 1 through 4, that's actually all you need to follow in order to establish a correction loop. You, of course, could set this up for multiple workflow steps. You even don't have to send it back to just the start step. If we had another approver step here, you could give them the ability to send this back to the approver. So it doesn't always have to go back to start. Most often it does, but it depends on your specific use case. So let's keep going. We've got this next action component. If we did want to give Adrian the ability to either reject, let's maybe call this rejected. I'm very creative here. The issue, though, is if Adrian hits reject right now, and they, type a reason here, there is nothing that's telling Droplet at the moment which type of rejection Adrian is trying to do. And you can see this if we go right into the step here. We have 2 rejection transitions. This says transition to start, and the condition is always. And then if no other rules are met, which would never be the case since this is always, then we transition to rejected. We have to change this condition. And in order for us to have almost like a switch, think of like a train track where it's saying, yeah, go this way and under this situation, otherwise go that way. We have to have something on the form that the approver would say, this is the flavor of rejection I'm trying to do. So what are we going to do? We're going to add a next action component, which is actually not a type of component. It is, pick your poison here, but typically what I advise is that you bring on a single choice component and then you just give it the label next action. I'm going to make this a width of 12 and I'll call it next action. It doesn't have to have this name. It could be anything. But I'm going to put the ID as next action. If you decide to choose a different ID, that's fine. Some of the expressions that you'll see in a little bit are going to be using this ID, and so you just want to make sure that that stays consistent for your use case. But here's what the options are going to be. And you can change the wording of these however you'd like. I'm just going to use this standard set, which is approve, needs changes. Very often people will put send back for corrections, something like that. And then permanently reject is my recommendation for this. This makes it really, really obvious what they are about to do as the approver. I sometimes see this as a horizontal arrangement just to save a little bit of space. It also looks really nice if there's a signature component over here. And so it's kind of like all contained in one row, which looks good. I'm just going to keep saving as I go just in case. Now, the last thing to do with this next action component is just to go over to visibility and make sure that obviously the start step certainly cannot edit it. That would be amazing if you could just, boom, approve all of your submissions. You could leave it read only. I recommend that you just leave it hidden, which you'll see in just a second. You probably just don't want to have the submitter see what the approval options are. And then, of course, on the approver step, we do want to make that editable so that they can click which type of action they're about to do next. And so now here's what we can do. We can go to the workflow. We see on the start step, they don't have that ability to see the next action radio buttons or single choice component. When I get to the approver step, though, you can see that they do have these options and they have these abilities to hit approve, needs changes, or permanently reject. Good. So we've added our component. The sixth of 7 is just to set a transition rule. So this is that switch on the train track I was just talking about. How does Droplet know, should it go to rejected or should it go back to the start? Well, if we go to the approver workflow step and we go right into edit step, we're going to apply a condition to this transition to the start step by clicking on this purple bar. And we now have a component. We can say, hey, look at what was chosen under this next action radio component. If its needs changes, then we're going to go back to the start. Otherwise, if no other rules are met and it's a rejection, well, the only other type of rejection is permanently reject. So that means it's going to transition to that rejected step. And we can test this. So I can X out of here. And let's say I'm on the approver step here. Needs changes. If I hit reject, I put a reason, test. We see that overwrites, it goes back to start. But if I click back on the approver workflow step and instead hit permanently reject and then reject, let's call this test 2, you can see, oh, well, now it knows not to travel down your loop pathway, your correction pathway, but instead to travel along this transition to rejected. And this overwrites the reason. It also does not assign. Might be a good idea in this case to add a custom email notification back to the submitter, just to let them know that their rejection has been reviewed, or their submission has been reviewed, and the result is that it's been rejected. So this is the bulk of it. I think one final thing to mention about this is step number 7. Let's take a look back at what the issue is here. If we look at this approver step, they may say permanently reject and then submit. And what happens in that case is it goes to the completed status. Even though they said permanently reject, they clicked the submit button, which is traveling down this transition. Similarly, they could technically say approve and then reject, in which case this would, they'd probably catch themselves here, but test 3, that's going to go to rejected because this was not needs changes, and in all other cases, whether it's permanently reject or approve, it's going to go to the rejected workflow step. So this is best practice to make this crystal clear to your users, foolproof to everybody out there as approvers who are using this form, is let's make the action buttons specific to the action. So here's how we're going to do that. I only want submit on the approver step. I only want submit to show up if they've chosen approve. And then I only want a rejection type of button to show up if they've chosen one of these 2 types of rejections. So we're going to go back over to the form. I'm actually going to add in a second set of action buttons. To this first set of action buttons, though, I'm going to make this only a submit type of action button. So I'm going to unselect reject. So even if there's the ability for somebody to reject, this set of action buttons will not show it. And then I'm going to bring in another set of action buttons right underneath here. And I'm going to do the inverse. I'm going to make this just my rejection button. One thing that I've picked up over the years, it might be nice if instead of this saying reject, it just matched whatever their chosen action was going to be. So here's a little trick. This is called next action up here. And on the reject button, what we could do is we could set the reject text to be next action. Ooh, I don't know how I got that A. But of course, we've got to surround this by 2 hashtags on either side so that Droplet sees that as something to dynamically insert. And so you can see it kind of is already previewing. If I choose next needs changes, this button is, instead of saying reject, is going to say needs changes. It's these little things that make it really foolproof. Okay, so let's take a look at what we've done. I'll just hit save and go back over to the workflow. We're at the approver step, and I hit approve. I have submit. Ooh, I really don't want both of these to show up. And then, of course, if I hit needs changes or permanently reject, I only want in the approve situation, I only want the submit button to appear. And in either of these, I want this to go away and I want this to appear. So we have to do some display rules on these action buttons. Let's start with this one, the needs changes. I'm going to go over to show or hide field. And I want this to show anytime next action is one of, because we've got, 2 of 3 options here, needs changes and permanently reject. So let's test that too. Is it working? If I hit approve, great. The rejection button goes away. So in that situation, all they can do is hit submit, which is exactly what we want to have happen. But if I select needs changes or permanently reject, the submit button is still hanging around. There's a little more to this. So if I said, hey, I only want the submit button to show up if the next action is approve, well, on the start step, they're never selecting next action. And so if we just said, hey, only if that's approved do we want to show the submit button, your start step would not have a submit button on it. So we do actually have to do something a little more nerdy in this situation. And here's what we have to do. We have to say, show this submit button if it's on the start step or if next action is approved. And in order to do that, we have to go to code. We don't yet have the current step as something that's selectable here. Just for the same reason that we went to code for the reason. We don't have the reject reasons showing up here yet. They're coming, but just not available at the moment. So here's the little code expression that we're going to write. And I'll give you just all a second to barf at this for just 1 second. Okay, so let's break this down into what exactly this is saying. Current step is a helper function. If you type in a computed component or any sort of logic screen, current step with a capital S, no spaces anywhere, and an empty set of parentheses, that's a little function. It's like a formula that's going to run. And what it'll do is it'll just return the ID of the current workflow step of that submission. So here we want this to be the start step. So we would say triple equals, and then start in all lowercase, just inside a set of single quotes. So this is our first test. Is the current step start? If the answer is yes, the submit button will show up. Good. Or, and we represent that by 2 pipes. This is actually technically JavaScript. This is not Droplet specific. 2 pipes, that key is probably just above your return key. You'd hit shift and then the forward slash. That's what or is. And then we have next action equals approve. Next action is that radio button. And if they've chosen approve, then we want to show that submit button. So let's do this. Switch back over to code. And we're going to say current step with a capital S, empty set of parentheses, equals start. Zoom in so you can see that. And then 2 pipes, which means or, next action is approve, just like that. Now, if you've labeled next action something different, you just want to use that there. Or if you've set the ID of next action to be something different, you just want to use the ID there. Similarly, if on next action, that very first option, if you put something like, is approved, you'd want to make sure that reflects exactly what you've set up there too. In my case, this is good, so I'm going to hit apply rule. And of course, let's test it, because we have to always make sure that this is looking good. So on the start step, I should still see a submit button. When I hit submit, great. I see approve with the submit button. And then that submit button goes away the moment next action is no longer equal to approve. And so that's exactly what I want. So approve, I can hit submit, that would go to completed. If I say needs changes, we can do test 4 in this case. That should go back to the beginning. It'll send my submitter a notification email saying, hey, you've got something to change. And then if I hit permanently reject, test 5, this should go to our permanent rejection, and I'm all set. So that's it. We got through it a little faster than anticipated. I'm sure there are a ton of questions out there because you all, I believe, are builders and have your own workflows that maybe you have some specific nuances to. Feel free to come off mute or drop your question in the chat. What questions do you have about workflow correction loops?
Nick, I apologize. It's Chrissy, because we did hop in a little late. Are you going to be sharing the recording of this? I do know it's being recorded.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. And then my other question is, so in looking at this next action, select buttons, is there a reason, I guess, and I don't know how to phrase this correctly, that we couldn't just do a single one that's need changes and then modify the buttons that way? Like, I'm just thinking as I'm watching, I understand, like, don't get me wrong, and this totally makes sense, but like, it looks a little odd to me to have, so and maybe you recall, like, our forms, instead of submit after the first step, it's approve everywhere else. Like, we require our approvers to approve. So like in our case, I feel like if the next action was approve and then the button said approve, that looks weird, right? So is it, and maybe if we decided that I would just have a button that says, even maybe a checkbox like send back form for changes, and then either a separate button applies or they just learn to click deny. Is there a problem with doing it that way so that we avoid the duplicate buttons?
Yeah, no, there's no problem with doing that. I should have mentioned at the beginning of this that there are more than one way to accomplish the exact same thing. I've seen it a lot of different ways. I think over the years and in my own district, I've sort of settled into this being a pretty solid practice because although it requires 2 clicks for some sort of action, it minimizes a lot of confusion and the need for 3 sets of action buttons or a conditional like checking off something to say this needs changes or to be rejected, and then you ask a separate question, well, is it needs changes or is it rejection? But yeah, this is just one way. I think that's probably the good thing and the bad thing about Droplet is that there's lots of different ways to accomplish whatever you'd like to accomplish. I think the most important thing for you and for the Stevenson group is that you are doing the thing that makes the most sense to your builders and the people that are going to be approvers within your workflow. So if you've got a better way to set this up, certainly do that. If you've got something that makes a little bit more sense to your team, do that for sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. I appreciate it.
And when you do that too, Chrissy, let me know so I can go in and take a look at it because maybe there's an even better way that I haven't yet seen.
Yeah, we'll let you know. I just know that a lot of our group, I feel like they have certain, I don't want to say expectations, and I don't want to sound like a negative thing, but it's not. But I could see where we would get feedback from some of our administration, like, well, why am I clicking this button just to click this button? So, and I think, to be honest, had we had not changed all of our submit buttons to approve, I might have a different mindset. But since all of our forms have approved 4,000 times, I feel like it would look weird for us. So yeah, I'll let you know what we decide, because I think we set it up on one form that we needed it, but we're finding as we've implemented, more people want this option. So we'll let you know what we do.
Chrissy, just to be clear, do you still have 2 sets of buttons? No. You still have a submit that says approve, and then a
yes.
And so you're basically saying, well, you've got the ability to approve here without also saying approve, but then if you want to reject, you've got to select what type of rejection, or maybe it's just you were saying just a checkbox that says this needs changes. Then when they hit reject, it follows a separate pathway. Is that right?
Yeah, my thought was that in the workflow, I would set up a rule that if this box is checked, it goes back to the submitter, whereas if not checked, it goes to the rejected state.
Yep. Now, here's the downside with that. If the approver does check off that something needs changes, they theoretically can still pass it along by hitting the submit or the approve button in your case.
My
So,
thought was that that button would go away if they selected needed changes.
okay, yeah, another valid way to do it.
Thank you, sorry.
No, don't apologize. That's great. Thanks for sharing. Any other questions out there or good ideas, Jeremy?
Yeah, I had a question. If you could just review, I might have just missed it, but the part where we were adding in a second section of action steps.
Yes.
So where did that go? And maybe I just missed it. We're still using two sections, right?
Yeah, we're still using two different action buttons. This first action button is only the submit type of action button. And gosh, you could even add in maybe a little formula that says, hey, if it's the start step, let's have this say the word submit. Otherwise, let's have it say the word approve. And then the second set of action buttons, it's kind of hidden right now because the system is pretending as if it's on the start step.
Yeah.
But this is the inverse. This is just a rejection type of button. And so these two will never appear at the same time. On your form, when you're editing it, it looks like you've got, two different action buttons. But to your users, they'll only ever see one button in a given moment.
Got it. Thanks.
Yep. Great.
Nick, I have a quick question.
Sure, Jen.
I think it's quick. So in your workflow, like let's say we have one just like that,
Yep.
and normally it gets the completed stage and it's done.
Mhm.
But if let's say it's a purchase order request and there's a dollar amount, and if the dollar amount reaches a certain point, then it has to go to another approver.
Mhm.
So I'm
Yep.
sure that the forms can't recognize the dollar amounts, but
Oh, sure they
we have
can.
something where, like, say that final step was Kim, and then she had to hit another button to be able to send it to someone else
Sure.
when she sees that it's over an amount.
Yeah. My recommendation in that case, you certainly can have the form recognize that amount.
Oh.
And I would say don't make Kim on the hook. Don't put Kim on the hook for checking the dollar amount if you can write a formula for something like that. So what you're suggesting is, hey, let's put in maybe another workflow step here that basically only gets used big spender if that dollar amount is, and let's assign this to maybe Casey. So what we could do here is, let me just go to the form and add something like a dollar amount. I'm going to put a mask on this that's dollars. And we can call this dollars, or we can call this maybe amount. Let's label it too, just for to make it look nice. And so what we could do is we could say, all right, on this workflow, I only want this step to be used if that amount is greater than, what's your threshold, would you say, Jen?
Like $750.
$750? So if we go in, right, not $7.50. So if we go in to add rule, we can say, well, we want this here. I think of things more in the positive. Let's have this run when the amount, and actually with something like this, we got to use a code expression because currency is a little odd. Sometimes like for numbers, you would have greater than or equal to. With currency, we've got to rip off that dollar sign on the front and have Droplet recognize it as a number. So if you switch to code, there's two ways to do this. You could ask Droplet AI to say if amount is greater than or equal to 750. Let's see if it does what it's supposed to do. Yeah, that's right. So we have that helper function that's called is greater than or equal to. But with this amount, we actually have to convert it from currency. So we have another helper function that's called from currency. And so we would just wrap the amount in that. So what this will do is, let's say the dollar amount is, $ 1,000. From currency is going to say, hey, let's just consider the number 1,000. And if that's greater than or equal to 750, let's use this step. Big spender needs to weigh in on this. So we can apply this rule and let's test it. So I'm going to go back to the start. I'm going to put one that's below 750. If we go to approve and then hit submit, it should skip right over big spender. Casey is not even aware. But if we go back to the start and just throw a 0 on the end, that's 2,000, right? I'm just going to fast forward to the approver step. This should stop at big spender. It might be that something about my formula is not right. But that's the idea, is I would say don't rely on Kim, program something in. And what I'll do, Jen, is I'll fine tune that little expression and I'll send you an email with what that ends up.
Okay, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, I found live demos I used to be a chemistry teacher, and sometimes you'd prepare, like I used to explode pumpkins. How every single time it would work testing, not in front of students. And then the moment students walked in and it was pumpkin explosion day, it was a dud. So I'll keep working on this and I'll send you what the result is. But that's definitely really common is, hey, let's use this step, only in the event that certain conditions are met. Mm-hmm.
Jen, I can confirm we actually do something similar with one of our forms and it does work. And Nick's right. I'm not going to try to find the formula and tell y'all, but it was able to set it up where it would look at the dollar amount and go to a specific step only if it was over that amount. So I can guarantee you that does work.
Yes. Thank you, Chrissy. Any other questions out there about anything really? Droplet related. I don't want to dispense life advice. I mean, I'll try if you have life questions.
Yeah, Nick, this was very helpful. It's nice to see like the foundation of setting up that the information on the top of the form where it says, it's declined because of. I know when you and I have worked, you had provided me the little formula, and so I've been just putting that on all of our forms. But it's nice to be able to see that breakdown of how it is like for like a new user, how to put that on the form. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the changes that some of the things that we've done that require code here, down the road won't. We know that these are really common tasks for builders, and it's something that we're hoping to just inject right into Droplet so you can build it really fast.
Hey, Nick, on that changes needed that appears in the top of the form, once the form is sent back, will that appear? And obviously, I guess it's just standardly versus changing it. Will that appear in every step? Because let's say your form has 6 steps and 5 rejects it, and now step 1, 2, and 3, 4, what happened? Will that continue through automatically, or is additional programming needed to make sure it appears on every step once it's sent back?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Thanks for bringing that up. This will appear by default because actually for the inverse, we would need to put on additional logic to actually have it hide. Right now, the only rule that we have is we want this to show up if reason has some sort of value. And so right now, without us changing anything about how this is set up, this will persist the moment something is rejected, and it will stay on there forever. Now, one common ask is, well, hey, we only actually want that to be on there during the start step. Or once it gets to completed, let's say, we want that to drop off because in that case, no changes are needed any longer. In that situation, you could just add to your logic here. So we could say also hide on the completed step. And it should add something. So is it reason? And hey, as the current step, this means not equal to completed. Let's apply that rule and save. So now if I go start, approver, big spender, the moment it's fully approved, that just drops off. That makes a lot of sense to me too. So that's something to consider. I do think so. Let's say that Casey here had the ability to send this back. Keep in mind, like you just mentioned, Adrian sent this on because clearly it made it to big spender. And so I think it is important for this to show up all throughout the in progress part of the workflow so that when Adrian re-reviews something that he thought, hey, I already approved this, he would see that this was sent back and he would see exactly the reason for it to be sent back. The last thing I'll mention is, and this can get really advanced, but it's Droplet. It's something that Droplet can handle. Some districts really like to have intermediary approvers not reapprove or re-review anything in the event that big spender, let's say, sent something back. They really wanted that submission just to go right back to big spender and not go through the entire workflow again. It's possible to do that. It takes some setup. You'd have to draw a connection line directly from here to here and have some computed components in the background doing some thinking about, well, who actually sent this back? And when this is resubmitted, let's just send it right back to that step. I actually tend to advise against that because I feel that anybody that has affixed their name and approval and their signature certainly to something should have the opportunity to re-review it if something about that submission has changed. So I think it's best practice to just have this go right back through the workflow, give everybody the rationale about why something was sent back by leaving this displayed at the top of the form, and then just having it kind of truck right through. The truth is, if the intermediary approvers already approved it, this should be a pretty quick thing to reapprove, as long as the changes that were made didn't change their decision.
Nick, quick question. So the information that is put on the reject, does that show up on the activity log? I haven't had a chance to actually dive into that,
Yeah,
but do you know if it shows
it
up on
does.
there?
Yeah, it does. We can bounce back out. I can look for a submission. I'm not sure I've had too many rejected here. Let me just look for a. Yeah, I don't have any rejected, but yes. So here, if, for example, we looked at the activity log, the rejection actions show up as red dots here. And then the rejection reason is populated right in here. What you could do is look for a submission in your own instance of Droplet that has been rejected and just pull up the activity log. You'll see it right in there. So that's nice. Here's the other thing. Let's say a submission has been rejected 2+ times. Although the reject reason is overwritten, it's at, the first rejection is the reason is going to be captured here in the activity log. So technically the data, even though that reason, that underscore reason is overwritten, the data is still captured for each type of rejection that happens. So yeah, that is good.
Another question really quick. So,
Yeah.
do we know when Droplet's going to release the notification preview?
Hmm. I've learned not to put any dates on things because when I think I know, something pops up that takes a higher priority. Um, I do know that, so we have when we have features that we're developing, we almost break them into phases. Um, so with the workflow tester in particular, this is phase two of the workflow tester. I believe phase three, and I'm not sure when that's going to happen, contains notification previews. That, I believe, when we're developing it, is going to have two varieties to it. You can just pop up and preview what the notification would be, or you can actually send a test notification so you can make sure that it's showing up properly in an email client. I want to say it's possible that the fourth phase of this has like an auto-populate fake data sort of button. So especially for longer forms, it would be great if you could just fill in with some sample data all of the forms. So that way you can quickly just go and test dynamic assignees and things like that without having to kind of fill in the same sort of dummy data as you do this. So more to come on that. Exactly when, I don't know.
So could phase 4 also include like a customization of your branded information on your school site?
Does that mean like
Ask.
your email notification?
Yeah.
That might be coming. That's not within the workflow tester. That would, I believe, is going to be coming sooner than other workflow tester enhancements. That's called white labeling, right? And so instead of it having, coming from mail.droplet.io, it turns out our team has looked into this. It seems like it might be an easier thing for us to implement sooner. So I would actually look for that earlier than any other workflow tester enhancements. And don't quote me on any of this. If you do, I'll just, oh, Romina's left. So I'll just say that Romina said it.
It's being recorded, so you're kind
Oh,
of.
shoot. I can edit. I'll edit it. Any other questions out there? This is good. Okay, great. Well, I will tell you this. I really appreciate you coming. I know all of you, well, many of you know about support.droplet.io because you went there to sign up for this. And so I just want to call out the fact that this training video will be shared with you all. It will also be posted here, of course, edited out, all the things that are embarrassing to me. You can also sign up for open office hours. This we're now using Droplet actually to manage instead of Calendly. So you can check that out. That's cool. Stay tuned to all of our new features in Droplet right here. And then, of course, search for items to find a knowledge-based article that might help you while you're waiting for a live training or an office hour session to pop up. Any last questions before we disconnect for today? Yeah, well, thank you, Evan. I appreciate it. Thanks, Lisette. Okay. Well, thanks, everybody.